Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine a city that should not exist. Built on nothing, on marsh, on mud, on the sheer stubbornness of men who refused to accept what the sea had decided. A city hammered into the soft earth on 10 million wooden piles, sinking imperceptibly, always sinking, and yet rising, rising in wealth, in ambition, in audacity, faster than any city in the history of the world. It is the 1650s. And Amsterdam is the center of everything. Not Rome. Not London. Not Paris. Amsterdam. A city of 200,000 souls, swollen with refugees and merchants, visionaries and swindlers, painters and preachers, sailors who have seen the edge of the world and come back changed. Its canals carry the scent of pepper and nutmeg from the Spice Islands, of Baltic timber, of Javanese silk, mixed always with the earthier perfume of horse dung, canal rot, and the perpetual damp that clings to every brick, every hem, every stone. You are standing at the water's edge. The city trembles with noise. The groan of cranes. The slap of rope against wood. The hammering from 100 workshops. Somewhere, a child is crying. Somewhere else, someone is laughing. Welcome to the most remarkable city on earth. Begin where Amsterdam begins, at the water. The IJ, the wide inland harbour at the city's northern edge, is never still. On any given morning in the 1650s, you might count 300 ships at anchor here, their masts rising like a leafless winter forest stretching to the horizon. These are not small vessels. These are the great fluid ships of the Dutch East India Company, the VOC, the most powerful trading corporation the world has ever seen. Ships that have sailed to Batavia, to Ceylon, to the coast of Japan, and returned carrying the commodities that are remaking European taste and European wealth. The dockhands who unload them are up before dawn. They are enormous men, these crewers, porters, their backs bent under sacks of grain, bolts of cloth, barrels of salted herring. They speak a dozen languages between them: Flemish, Low German, Portuguese, Yiddish, broken Danish. Amsterdam has always been a city of strangers. That is precisely its strength. Moving south from the harbour, the noise intensifies at the dam, the great central square from which the city takes its name. Here, the original dam that held back the Amstel River has long since been swallowed by the growing city, but its memory remains in stone. The new town hall, the Stadhuis, is under construction through much of this decade, a monument in white sandstone so vast and so ambitious that Amsterdam citizens call it the eighth wonder of the world. Its foundations require 13,659 wooden piles, each one driven by hand into the soft earth below. Watch the construction workers. They are perpetually damp, perpetually loud. They work in organized gangs, passing stone and timber hand to hand in human chains, their foreman barking instructions in a city dialect thick with imported words. When the clock strikes noon, they eat from wooden bowls, hutspot, a stew of root vegetables and whatever salted meat their wages allow. It is not elegant. Nothing about the dam is elegant in this decade. It is raw and loud and enormous with possibility. Step back from the dam and look south. What you see is the greatest feat of urban planning since ancient Rome. The canal ring, the Grachtengordel, is Amsterdam's true masterpiece. 3 great concentric semicircles of water, the Herengracht, the Keizersgracht, the Prinsengracht, each flanked by elm trees and lined with the narrow, tall-fronted merchant houses that have become the signature of Dutch prosperity. These houses tell you everything about the people who built them. They are narrow. Amsterdam's property taxes are levied on street frontage, so every merchant squeezes his fortune into the thinnest possible facade. But they are tall. 4, 5, 6 stories of red brick and white sandstone, topped with elaborately carved gables, step gables, neck gables, bell gables, each one a small architectural declaration of individuality. At the very top, a hoisting beam juts outward, used daily to winch goods up from the street into the upper storage floors, because the staircases inside are so vertiginously steep that furniture cannot pass through them. Walk along the Herengracht on a Tuesday morning. The merchant wives are out early, directing servants to scrub the stoops with hard brushes, polishing the brass door fittings to a blinding shine. Cleanliness here is not merely a virtue, it is a competitive sport. The Dutch housewife of the 1650s has a fearsome reputation across Europe. Visitors report being made to remove their shoes at the door, being handed cloths to wipe their boots, finding floors so spotless they are embarrassed to walk on them. But do not mistake the domestic order for quietude. Inside these tall, narrow houses, commerce never sleeps. The ground floor is a counting house or a warehouse or both. Ledger books lie open on heavy oak desks. An apprentice scratches figures. A factor reads a letter just arrived from Batavia, 6 months in transit, with news of the pepper harvest. In the kitchen, 1 floor up, the cook is preparing soap, pea soup thick enough to stand a spoon in, while the youngest daughter of the house practices her reading from a Lutheran Psalter. The Dutch are, by European standards of the century, remarkably literate. Both sexes. Even the poor can often read. Now leave the canal ring. Cross westward into the Jordaan. The contrast is violent and immediate. The Jordaan is Amsterdam's working-class quarter, built in the first decades of the century to house the flood of refugees pouring in from the Spanish Netherlands, from France, from the German states torn apart by the 30 Years' War. Its streets are narrower than the canal rings, its canals smaller and less salubrious, its air heavier with the smells of the trades that operate here, the tanneries, the dye works, the soap boilers, the breweries. Here is where Amsterdam's craft economy actually lives. On the Elandsgracht, a weaver named Peter, or someone very much like him, is at his loom before the light is fully up. He is a Flemish refugee, or his father was. His workshop occupies the ground floor of a rented house. His family sleeps in 2 rooms above. He weaves fustian, a heavy cloth of cotton and linen, for export to the Baltic. His children, 3 of them, the oldest perhaps 10, are expected to help. The 10-year-old works the shuttle. The younger ones card wool. There is no schooling today. Around the corner on the Bloemgracht, a silversmith is at his bench. His work is finer than Peter's weaving, his clients richer, the merchant wives who commission the elaborate drinking vessels and candlesticks that their portraits will later immortalize. He is Jewish, possibly Sephardic, part of the Portuguese Jewish community that has made Amsterdam its refuge after generations of persecution. Amsterdam's Jews cannot own property in most of Europe. Here, while still subject to certain restrictions, they can trade, worship in their own synagogues, and participate in the commercial life of the city with a freedom that is, in this century, almost unprecedented. The Jordaan is also where Amsterdam's poor come to die. In the darker alleys, the stegen, the narrow passages between houses where sunlight never fully penetrates, the evidence of poverty is undeniable. Children with distended bellies. Women washing clothes in canal water that carries the runoff of the tanneries. Old men who have given their bodies to the sea and come back with nothing to show for it. Amsterdam's wealth is real. Its inequality is equally real. The city knows this, and it has built, by the standards of the age, a remarkable apparatus of public charity, the Weeshuizen, the orphanages, the Hofjes, the almshouse courtyards tucked behind their famous hidden gates. But the gap between the merchant on the Herengracht and the day labourer in the Jordaan is a chasm that no amount of civic virtue fully bridges. If the men of Amsterdam built its commerce, the women of Amsterdam kept it breathing. Come to the market on the Newmarkt on a Wednesday morning. It is everything and everyone. Fishwives in heavy aprons, their hands raw from the cold, selling herring from wooden barrels, the humble herring that first made Amsterdam rich, the fish that Dutch captains learned to gut and salt at sea so it would survive the voyage home, giving them a commercial advantage that lasted 2 centuries. Beside them, the Kaasmeisters, the cheese girls, stacking wheels of Edam and Gouda with practiced efficiency, calling their prices in voices that carry across the square. These are not simply market vendors. Many are running family businesses in their husband's absence, husbands who are at sea for months or years at a time. The VOC's voyages to the East Indies take 18 months at minimum, often longer. During that time, Amsterdam's women manage the accounts, negotiate the contracts, deal with the factors. The Dutch legal system, more accommodating than most in this century, allows married women certain property rights. Not equality, but agency. Watch the women at the water pumps. Amsterdam has a network of communal pumps drawing from cisterns fed by rainwater, augmented by the canal water filtered through sand. The water is not clean by modern standards. Typhoid and dysentery are persistent visitors, but it is better than in most European cities, and the Dutch habit of boiling water for Geneva, the juniper spirit that is the national drink, inadvertently provides some protection. The women at the pumps talk. They exchange news of the neighborhood, who is ill, whose husband has returned, what the price of rye has done this week. In a city without newspapers freely available to the poor, the pump is the news service of the Jordaan. And then there are the women who do not appear in the official records at all. In the alleys near the harbour, the old medieval streets of the Wallen, which in this century as in all centuries before and after serve as Amsterdam's red light district, the women who have no other options negotiate their survival in the only currency available to them. Amsterdam's tolerance is famous. Its pragmatism is less discussed. The city looks away from what it cannot fix, and profits, quietly, from what it refuses to name. But Amsterdam is not only commerce. It is also, improbably, magnificently, a capital of the human spirit. In a workshop on the Sint-Anthonisbriestraat, a street of painters and print sellers and curiosity dealers, a man in his mid-40s is working by north-facing window light. He is not, at this particular moment, a commercially successful man. His tastes are extravagant, his debts considerable, his domestic arrangements complicated. But when he picks up his brush, something happens that has not happened before in the history of painting, and will not be equaled for centuries after. You know his name. Rembrandt van Rijn. He is not alone in this city of painters. Amsterdam in the 1650s supports hundreds of professional artists, fed by a market for paintings that has no parallel elsewhere in Europe. This is the peculiarity of Dutch wealth. It is not concentrated solely in the hands of an aristocracy or a church, as in Italy or France, but spread across a prosperous merchant class that wants its prosperity reflected back at it. Merchant families commission portraits. Guild halls commission group portraits. Middle-class households buy landscapes, still lifes, domestic interiors, the genre paintings of Vermeer and de Hooch and their contemporaries that show us, with startling intimacy, exactly what it looked like inside these canal houses. The fall of light through a window, a woman reading a letter, a map on the wall, a tiled floor, a dog asleep in the corner. This is a city that looks at itself constantly, and finds what it sees worth recording. In other buildings, across other disciplines, the same spirit operates. Spinoza, the philosopher's son, the lens grinder, the man who will eventually think thoughts so dangerous. The city's Jewish community formally excommunicates him, is in his 20s in the 1650s, beginning to formulate the ideas about God and nature and human freedom that will reshape European philosophy. The Portuguese Jewish community in their synagogue on the Houtgracht arguing Talmud and the nature of the soul. Calvinist ministers in the great churches are preaching a theology of individual conscience and commercial virtue. Catholics worship in hidden Schuylkirchen, the concealed churches whose ornate interiors still survive today behind ordinary canal house facades, invisible from the street, perfectly tolerated by a city that finds religious persecution bad for business. Freedom of thought in Amsterdam is not an abstract principle. It is a commercial strategy. And it works as the light fails over the IJ, and the watchmen begin their rounds with their lanterns and their rattles, and the canal water turns from grey to black. It is worth pausing to reckon with what this city is. Amsterdam in the 1650s is an empire. It does not always call itself that. The Dutch prefer the language of trade, of contracts, of profit, but its reach extends to every inhabited continent. Its VOC monopoly over the spice trade is maintained by force, by the burning of villages that refuse to sell exclusively to Dutch factors, by the enslavement of populations in the East Indies, by a violence at the margins that the comfortable merchant houses on the Herengracht are carefully arranged not to see. The wealth in the warehouses, the nutmeg in the spice jars, the silks in the merchant study, they carry a cost that is not recorded in any Amsterdam ledger. The people who paid it live, and die, on the other side of the world. This is the complexity Amsterdam asks you to hold, the tolerance and the brutality, the freedom at home and the coercion abroad, the painting of light in a domestic interior and the darkness that funded the canvas and the paint. History rarely offers the comfort of simple heroes. The night watch makes its rounds. The last ships settle in the harbour. Somewhere in the Jordaan, a baby is being born in a room above a weaver's workshop, into a world that will, within a generation, begin to tilt away from Amsterdam, toward London, toward Paris, toward the next chapter of European power. But not yet. For now, the city breathes. The piles beneath its feet sink a millimeter deeper into the mud. The elm trees along the canal shiver in the autumn wind. A painter puts down his brush. A merchant counts his guilders by candlelight. A sailor's wife reads a 6-month-old letter from Batavia and holds it to her chest. The most remarkable city on earth goes to sleep. And in the morning, it will begin again.